What I'm going to do for this video is categorize every skill in the game as either a DPS skill or a comfort skill. You guys are very familiar with this concept. DPS skills are ones that contribute to you increasing your damage per second, which, as we all know, leads to a lower quest time. And comfort skills are those that people use as a crutch. Let's be honest about it. The type of people that categorize skills into DPS and comfort typically are the type of people who consider DPS skills to be the most valuable and everything else to be a band-aid to get you through the part of the game where you suck. When you talk about which skills are DPS skills versus which skills are comfort skills, you have to take into account the reality of the Monster Hunter player base. A lot of people who talk about DPS are those who like to put the game in the frame of a theoretical situation, a hypothetical situation that very few people ever encounter. A situation where you are executing your combos perfectly or near perfectly, and the monster is cooperating with you, and there aren't other things getting in the way, like other monsters intruding, like other players screwing things up. And so all the hypothesizing and theorizing you see in that regard is for a hypothetical scenario that doesn't apply to most of us. So if you want to be honest about which skills are DPS skills, you have to think about this in terms of which skills are going to contribute to higher DPS for the vast majority of players. Now, I'm not talking about players who are interested in DPS. I'm not talking about players who have played a certain number of hours or who have reached a certain proficiency level. I'm talking about every single person in the Monster Hunter player base, whatever game you decide to pick. For this exercise, we're using Monster Hunter Rise Sunbreak. So we're going to talk about these skills in the context of, does this skill contribute to higher DPS for the majority of the player base, from brand new players to those who have some small level of proficiency with 1 or 2 weapons, those who can get by, those who can complete quests. Maybe they're completing them in 30-40 minutes, up to the mid-tier player. Now, there aren't very many mid-tier players, are there? If you really think about it, no one's really run the numbers on this. If you use Steam as your game distribution platform, you can look at the awards, trophies, how many people have gotten to a certain point in the game, what percentage of the player base has gotten to a certain point. And so you can get a pretty good reflection of where people are at in the progress in the game. And you can get a rough idea of what percentage of the player base achieves a particular skill level. You're not going to get it precise. I understand that, but you can get a rough idea. And if you do that, you'll notice that there's only a very small percentage of people who really, really nail this game, who really demonstrate a level of proficiency that affords them the luxury of playing without a lot of so-called comfort skills. Now, if you don't believe me, look, I can make a video on that too. Or you can just wait a couple months and see it in Monster Hunter Wilds, right? You can see all the new players coming in, and you can just go into a quest and watch them. If you're one of those people who feels really confident with their Monster Hunter skills and thinks, oh yeah, most people eventually get to the level that I'm at. Okay, wait till Wilds comes out. Go in with a bunch of noobs and just watch them. Watch how they play, give them a couple weeks even to learn the ropes. So after a couple weeks, and just look at how many people truly suck at Monster Hunter. Sure, it's a new game, right? But all your old skills are going to transfer over. All your abilities are going to transfer over, right? And obviously not the in-game ones, your personal skills. Your skills as a gamer are going to translate from one Monster Hunter to the next. And if you still doubt me, there's nothing I can do to convince you otherwise. You're just set in your ways, and this video is probably not for you. Regardless, I'm going to talk about these skills in the context of the vast majority of Monster Hunter players. And does this skill contribute to a higher DPS, or does it contribute merely to comfort? All right, so a lot of these are going to be pretty straightforward. So I'm going to go through real quickly and do the easy ones, the easy DPS skills, because they're just obvious to everyone. And then we'll go through and discuss some of the rest and see what category they fit in. Pretty straightforward, right? Without further ado, let's do this. Let's get into it. Let's throw some more cliched phrases at you. Adrenaline rush. This is one of those obvious DPS skills. So we're going to put a big X right here. Let's change the font size on that. Berserk. We'll come back to this one. I think I used Berserk once or twice. Blade Scale Hone. This sharpens your weapon, right? And for bows, it will increase the attack of your close range ammo. So this is clearly a DPS skill. Higher sharpness means more damage. And of course, it just directly affects the damage output of your close range coatings. So Blood Awakening, this is just attack power. So clearly DPS. I've used that on my Charge Blade set. It's pretty nice. Blood Right, proportion to damage dealt is converted to health. So yeah, I use that quite a bit. That one's not an obvious DPS skill. So we'll come back to that one too. Bloodlust, you gain a variety of effects and those effects are damage related. So Bloodlust, definitely a DPS skill. Not many people will argue with that. Build up boost, yet again another one, increases your attack power. It's right in the description. Burst increases attack. Charge Master, the element and status build up, obviously DPS. Coalescence enhances attacks, again DPS. Defiance increases defense when monsters become enraged. All right, that one's not obviously a DPS skill, so skip that one. Dereliction. Dereliction's a DPS skill. I don't even need to read it. I've heard so many people talk about Dereliction, the best DPS skill you can get. Dragon Conversion is all about your element boosting, and I use that one a lot on Charge Blade. Element Exploit increases elemental damage, obviously DPS. Embolden, more likely to be enraged, etc. Okay, Foray. Foray is a DPS skill, increases attack power. I mean, anything that says increases attack power is a DPS skill by definition, right? So these are the easy ones I'm trying to knock out. Frenzied Bloodlust. This gives you an extra Wirebug, so that one doesn't directly increase your attack power. So Furious pairs with Dragon Conversion, and so Furious is clearly a DPS skill. Grinder Ass is just a straight DPS skill. Guts, Heaven Sent is not a tech power boosting skill. Inspiration, extra attack, good. Trebid Heart, no. Mail of Hellfire increases attack. It says it right in the description. Powder Mantle. Powder Mantle is extra damage, so yes. Quick Breath, this doesn't directly affect your damage. Redirection, no. Shock Absorber, no. Sneak Attack directly affects your damage. Spiritbird's Call. Status Trigger. Yeah, Status Trigger is cool for status buildup. This is a DPS skill too, because if you're doing status buildup, say like Blast, that means more damage. More poison buildup, more damage. Strafe increases elemental attack, easy. Tune-up increases the stats of custom mods. Now, tune-up is definitely a DPS skill because it will directly affect your attack power. Wall Runner, Wind Mantle, Infinity Sliding, yes, but does anyone really use this effectively? Is it possible to use that effectively? Agitator, yes. Ammo Up increases bowgun loading capacity. It doesn't directly affect your damage, does it? Artillery, yep. Attack boost. Ballistics doesn't directly affect your damage, does it? So Blast Attack, obviously. Blast Res, Blight Res, Bludgeoner. Bludgeoner's cool. Obviously DPS. Bombardier, obviously DPS. Botanist, oh my goodness. Bowcharge Plus. Bubbly Dance doesn't directly affect your damage. Capture Master, no. Carving Master, no. Carving Pro. Chameleos Blessing. Oh, extends the duration of your poison. So yep, Chameleos Blessing, direct DPS. Constitution, not a DPS skill. Oh, somebody will tell us that's a DPS skill, right? Certain bow aficionado. Counter-Strike, DPS skill. I don't know anyone who even uses it. I'd like to see someone use it so I can understand how and why. Crit Boost, Critical Draw, Critical Element, Critical Eye, Defense Boost. That's not a DPS skill, right? Diversion, Divine Blessing, Dragon Attack, Dragon Heart, boost your attack power. Earplugs, Evade Extender Window, Fire Attack, Flinch Free, Focus. That does not directly affect your damage. Fortify does. Frostcraft does. Guard Up, Handicraft, obviously. Hellfire Cloak. Yeah, technically it does. Not that efficient, I guess, at it, but it does do it. Heroics for sure. War Maestro, it's right in the description. Shockwave damage. Ice Attack. Item Prolonger, yes. I mean, the longer you prolong attack buff, it's directly contributing to more damage, so there's no question about that. Jump Master, Kushala Blessing, Water and Ice Attack Boost. Temporarily increases affinity, got it. Leap of Faith, Load Shells. Some people are going to argue that that's a DPS skill. It's not obviously a DPS skill, right? It doesn't directly affect your damage. damage. Marathon Runner, Master Mounter, Master's Touch, keeps your sharpness up. Maximum Might, keeps your affinity up. Mind's Eye, more damage to hard targets. Muckres, Mushromancer, DPS skill, not directly, right? Normal Rapid Up, obviously. Offensive card, Paralysis Attack, Heartbreaker. A lot of people say Heartbreaker is not a DPS skill. Is it directly a DPS skill? Well, you break certain parts and then the exposed part typically is weaker. So yeah, the faster you can get to that weaker spot, the better. Peak Performance, increases attack, pierce up, poison attack, power prolonger, stay powered up longer. Definitely, you can keep your stuff powered up, you're doing more damage. Protective Polish, keeps your sharpness up. Punishing Draw, stun effect, and slightly increases attack power. I'm not saying you want to use all these skills, right? I'm not saying that these are the best DPS skills. I'm saying these directly affect your damage per second. So we got quite a few of them in here, don't we? Quick Sheath, Rapid Fire Up, definitely love that one. Rapid Morph will increase your attack power. Razor Sharp, sharpness management, DPS for sure. Recoil Down, reduces recoil when firing bowgun ammo. Yeah, the lower your recoil, the faster you can shoot your ammo. Damage per second, right? So anything that reduces the time to pull off an attack is definitely recovery speed, recovery up. Reload speed, here's another one. Decreases the time in between your ammo shots. Resentment, increases your attack. Resuscitate, increases your attack. Sleep Attack, increases your attack. Sleep Resistance, Slugger, makes it easier to stun monsters. Spare Shot, this one is not so obvious, but it decreases the number of times you have to reload, which means less time in between attacks. Special Ammo Boost, definitely really nice one. Speed Sharpening, decreases the time in between your attacks at maximum sharpness. Spread Up, Stamina Surge, Stamina Thief, Steadiness, Storm Soul, yep. Stun Res, Aostra Blessing is going to give you a damage boost. Thunder Alignment, I don't remember exactly what this one does. I want to skip that for now. I have to research that a little bit. Thunder Res, Tremor Res, Wall Runner, Water Attack, Water Res, Weakness Exploit, Easy, Wide Range, can directly boost the DPS of your teammates. So we'll include that. It's not obvious to you how wide range works. Well, when you have wide range, you consume an item. The effects that you get are also transmitted to your teammates. So if you consume an item that boosts your attack power, then your teammates' attack power is boosted as well. Pretty simple. Wide range, definitely a DPS skill. Now, granted, it's a DPS skill in multiplayer, but nonetheless, it is a DPS skill. Wind Alignment. This one does something weird too, like Thunder Alignment. I'm gonna have to look them up. Wirebug Whisper and Windproof. These are the obvious DPS skills, okay? Almost all of the armor skills are designed to directly increase the damage that you do and how quickly you do that damage. Think about what I just said. The damage that you do and how quickly you can do that damage. For the meta crowd out there watching this, or anyone even inclined in that direction, I often hear, the argument, well, Monster Hunter is designed to give you incentives for increasing your DPS. After all, there's a clock, right? And the clock is there to incentivize you to clear quests more quickly. That's their argument, not mine. Let's just assume that that's true. Let's assume that Monster Hunter is designed to incentivize you to clear your quests more quickly. So the faster you can do your attacks, the higher your DPS will be. So it logically follows from that any armor skill that will allow you to attack more often, more frequently, that will reduce the amount of time in between your attacks. Any armor skill that does that can, by definition, be considered a DPS skill. The first pass was looking at how these skills directly affect your damage. All of these skills with an X in them will directly affect your damage, and thus damage per second. So the second piece of that equation is damage per second. What that means is reduce the amount of time in between your attacks. So these X skills increase your damage. Now let's see if any of these other skills that don't increase your damage per se can reduce the amount of time in between your attacks. Because see, that's two parts to DPS, isn't it? It's not just higher damage, it's higher damage more often. So every skill that doesn't have an X on it, let's see if it will reduce the amount of time in between your attacks. Again, not just the perfect scenario, okay? Not just a bot that's programmed to follow a script, not just someone who's memorized a quest and memorized every second of a monster encounter. We're talking about skills that can decrease the amount of time in between the attacks of the majority of Monster Hunter players. Berserk. This one's a little weird. Let's take a closer look at what Berserk does. What Berserk will do is convert your, as it says here, vitality to red and start decreasing. So as long as you have a red gauge, you cannot faint. So how does this work in practice? So you max out your Berserk, you get 2 or 3 health recovery skills going, and you can keep your red gauge maxed out. It will drain faster every time you get hit. So what this does is it requires you to not get hit in order to use it effectively. But what's the advantage of Berserk? You get the red gauge, but as soon as you get hit, it starts going down, even when you have all of the recovery skills on you. The point of having Berserk is so that you are basically immortal. But as soon as you start getting hit, the gauge starts going down. So in order to be immortal, you have to not get hit. Well, look, you can be immortal by not getting hit without using the Berserk skill, all right? So Berserk on its own doesn't do much good, but when you pair Berserk with another skill that deals damage based on the amount of red gauge that you have, now you have a DPS skill. The skill that people like to pair it with is called Strife. Strife will increase your elemental attack and affinity in proportion to the length of your red health gauge. So if you can maintain Berserk without dying and you pair it with Strife, you're going to boost your element attack pretty significantly. So we're going to call it a DPS skill. And I don't think anyone's going to disagree with me on that. Now, Bloodright. Bloodright doesn't directly affect your damage. Does Bloodright contribute to lower time in between attacks? If you're the type of person that gets hit on occasion and Bloodright is healing you while you are attacking the monster, what that means is you can continue to attack the monster while simultaneously healing, which means you don't have to stop attacking to heal yourself. So Bloodright, yes, it does decrease the time in between attacks, which is to say it eliminates many of those breaks that you have to take in order to heal yourself. So Bloodright, by the actual definition of damage per second, let's not forget that per second part, Bloodright is a DPS skill. Absolutely. And for most players, this is effective. Again, for players who don't get hit, it becomes less effective. But that's not what we're talking about here, are we? We're talking about the vast majority of players. Defiance will nullify roars. It will nullify wind and dragon wind, tremors, and raise your defense. DPS skill, Defiance, will allow you to continue to attack while the monster is roaring, tremoring, or blowing on you. Instead of having to do some evasive maneuver to get past them, you can simply stand there and continue to attack. It also boosts your defense, which we'll get into in a little bit. Definitely reduces the time in between attacks. Embolden, I like this one. Defense plus 40 prolongs dodging invincibility. So basically gives you evade window 5 and gives you a couple levels of guard. You might look at this and say, well, defense, evade window, guard boost. We won't get into the defense right now. We won't get into the evade window right now, but I will talk about the guard boost that it provides. Now, if you don't play weapons with shields, you're not really familiar with this concept. You're a longsword player, bow user. When you can boost your guard, you can hit certain tiers for certain monster attacks, and the blocking animation is significantly reduced. So the idea, when you have a shield, the idea is to get enough guard so that for most of the attacks that you have to deal with, the blocking animation is reduced to almost nothing. So Embolden, by boosting your guard, will reduce the time of your blocking animation and thus reduce the time in between attacks. So Embolden is a direct DPS skill by reducing time between attacks. All right. Frenzied Bloodlust. Frenzied Bloodlust gives you another Wirebug. The more Wirebugs you have, the shorter the time in between your Wirebug attacks. Funny how that works. Guts prevents fainting one time only when damage taken exceeds a certain amount of your remaining health. Wow. Guts. Look, if you get hit by a monster and instead of fainting, you don't faint, you're going to cut however long it takes that animation to run and then you getting back to the monster. It's going to cut that much time off in between two of your attacks. So like a minute, minute and a half. It's going to cut that much time down. Guts is absolutely a DPS skill. Heaven Sent. Okay, so Heaven Sent does a lot of things, right? Is going to reduce your stamina consumption, reduce your sharpness consumption. It's going to allow you to remove or reduce status ailments. So We'll get into the stamina in a few minutes here. Sharpness consumption, just as a sharpness management skill, Heaven Sent is directly a DPS skill. We won't get into the other aspects of that right now. We'll deal with those others in a few minutes. Intrepid Heart, it's damage reduction, basically. And so anything that does damage reduction, sure, look, I know a lot of people who love the meta, even speedrunners, whoever they are. And yeah, speedrunners who like to talk about what's best for the vast majority of players, those particular ones, all right? Not the ones who just go out and show off with their AI mods and such, but the ones who are putting out tutorials for the average player to follow. Many of them will tell you, use Intrepid Heart. Why? To save your ass. That's why. Well, who cares? Who cares if you cart? Just get better, right? Just get back out there and keep fighting. The reason why they don't want you to cart is because, first of all, they know you're going to get hit. Fine. We all are going to get hit, except them, of course. But they tell you to use Intrepid Heart so that you don't get one shot. Who cares about getting one shot? What's the big deal? What's the drawback of getting one shot? The drawback of getting one shot is that now you have to spend all that time getting back to the monster. There's a huge amount of time in between your attacks. And if you get one shot 3 times in the quest, you got to start the quest over. All of that work that you just did is erased. The time in between your attacks effectively becomes however much time you spent on that quest. So you spent 6 minutes on the quest and you triple carded. It doesn't matter about your DPS at that point because all that damage gets wiped off the books because you didn't kill the monster. You didn't beat the quest. So a triple cart, I mean, is a great way to increase the amount of time in between your attacks, meaningful attacks, right? A meaningful attack to me would be any attack that contributes to you winning the quest. So you got to back up all that time and then the time in between quests that you spent preparing. And yeah, so Intrepid Heart, by following their advice and using it to prevent the one-shot kills, definitely a DPS skill, definitely reduces the time between attacks. So I'm putting that in the DPS column. Someone tells you, okay, well, Intrepid Heart is a defense skill. It's a comfort skill, blah, blah. Is it really? Is it really a comfort skill just because it prevents you from getting one shot? Like, look, if you are concerned about DPS and you get one shot and you keep getting one shot, your time between meaningful attacks can add up to hours and hours because you keep failing your quests. And so if we're talking damage per second, time between attacks needs to be reduced. Intrepid Heart will reduce that time. Quick breath. We'll come back to that one. Redirection. We're going to come back to that one too. Shock Absorber. Shock Absorber, absolutely a DPS skill. Why? Because when you're playing multiplayer and your friends are shooting any ammo right through your back or just beating the shit out of everybody and everything, they're going to flinch you. They're going to interrupt your combos. By hitting you, they're going to increase the time between your attacks, especially the time between your big attacks. So Shock Absorber will negate all of their flinches on you and thus, in multiplayer, reduce your time between attacks. Spearbird's Call. Random Spearbird at fixed intervals, absolutely DPS. Because while you do get random Spearbirds, you are potentially getting a Spearbird that's going to boost your attack power. And while you may think, well, it's a trivial amount, it doesn't matter how trivial the amount is. It is, by definition, increasing your attack power. Okay, wall runner boost, Wirebug gauge recovers faster while wall running, absolutely. Reduce the time it takes your Wirebugs to charge up means reduce the time in between your Wirebug attacks, DPS skill. Wind Mantle, same thing. Reduce the time it takes your Wirebugs to recharge, reduces the time in between your Wirebug attacks. Wind Mantle is an amazing DPS skill because it will allow you to spam certain high damage Wirebug attacks. Ammo Up, increases bowgun loading capacity, definitely DPS. Why? Because when you increase the loading capacity of your ammo, you reduce the number of times you have to hit the reload button, thus reducing the time in between your attacks. Ballistics. If you don't know how Ballistics works, here it is. Ballistics will extend your critical distance range so that you don't have to move around so much in order to maintain critical distance. The less movement you have to do, the fewer evades or rolls or any, whatever type of adjustments you have to make in order to get into critical distance, the less time you will spend doing that as opposed to attacking, especially for ammo types that you can shoot very quickly. You will increase the number of impacts on the monster that are at full damage. So if your critical distance range is really wide, and the monster's kind of wiggling around and moving back and forth, you're more likely to have more of your attacks hit at the highest tier of damage when you have ballistics. So ballistics, directly a DPS skill. Blast resistance, protection against blast blight, blight res, blast res, fire res, all of these resistances. First of all, we're going to talk about the elemental resistance, get them right off the board. All of the elemental resists, I don't have to spin these at all, okay? Because your elemental resists are directly DPS skills. And they're directly DPS skills by virtue of the skill Dragon Conversion existing. Elemental resist skills will boost the effectiveness of Dragon Conversion, thus making your elemental skills directly contribute to higher damage. So we're going to put an X on every single elemental resist skill. I'm talking about fire attack. I'm talking about fire resistance, okay? The higher your resistance is, the more effective Dragon Conversion is. So let's just put 5 X's on all of these resistances. And if you don't quite understand this, that's fine. I have a video on how Dragon Conversion works, so you can check that video out. You can look up anyone's Dragon Conversion video, and they should be telling you the same thing. I will say though, some people don't tell you this little trick. You know, they don't say boost your resistances up with these skills, but they're very, very effective. Now, blast resistance. Not a lot of monsters use blast, but this says it grants protection against blast blight. And in the scenarios where blast blight is an issue, blast resistance can prevent you from exploding, and exploding greatly increases the time in between attacks. So blast resistance will definitely decrease the time between your attacks by you not having to worry about exploding all the time. Blight resistance grants protection against all elemental blights. Now, to make a determination as to whether this is DPS or comfort, you'd have to understand how all the different elemental blights work. But let me just give you one example that's good enough. Dragon Blight. When you get Dragon Blight on you, the elemental portion of your damage disappears. You're not doing it anymore. So let's say you have a elemental build, so a good chunk of your damage is fire damage. You get Dragon Blight on you, you're not doing any fire damage. You're just doing raw damage. That's pretty clear, right? If you can prevent that Dragon Blight, you will ensure that all your attacks hit for full damage in that moment. You'll get all that elemental attack power back. Pretty simple. We don't even have to talk about the other resists. Botanist increases the quantity of herbs and other consumable items you gather. I don't know if that's a DPS skill. I don't even know if that's a comfort skill. We'll come back to that one. Bubbly Dance. Bubbly Dance in conjunction with another skill makes it a DPS skill, because Bubbly Dance actually gives you a blight. And there are skills that trigger when you have a blight on you. And one of those skills is a DPS skill, Resuscitate. So increases your attack power when suffering from abnormal status. I use Bubbly Dance to increase my attack power. Capture Master, high chance of increased capture rewards. Carving Master lets you carve one additional time. Now, a lot of people will make the argument that the whole purpose of playing Monster Hunter is to grind, is to just fight more monsters and get more rewards, meaning more monster parts so that you can build more gear, more weapons, more armor. And that's the whole point of the game, right? That's the entire game loop, they like to say, these armchair game developers. And so if you are doing that and doing that well and doing that frequently, then you are doing the game right. You're playing the game right. You're playing efficiently, they say. The more monsters you can capture per hour, or the more quests you can win per hour, the more efficient you are at the game. The whole point, though, of beating more quests is not just to beat quests. The whole point of beating quests is to get the monster rewards. When you look at DPS, they'll say, well, you have to look at DPS over the entire play session, or in fact over your entire experience in the game, because the DPS that matters is the extended DPS, the long-term DPS. How many quests can you complete in the shortest period of time? Thus, how many more rewards you can get in the shortest period of time. I see this argument a lot in the comments. They'll say that's what it means to play efficiently. All right, so if DPS is all about playing efficiently, and DPS is useful only in this context, and it all comes down to not damage per second in that moment, but rewards per hour, then Capture Master, Carving Master are what it's all about. Everyone should be running these, because that means more rewards per hour, which means fewer monsters that you have to actually kill, which means more effective damage per second, more effective use of your time. Every bit of damage you do is that much more useful toward the end goal. So with Capture Master and Carving Master, you'll get more rewards, meaning you will have to fight fewer monsters. So if you can save yourself even a single monster, that's the equivalent of you doing all of that damage instantaneously. So let's say you're grinding a monster that has 50,000 health. And by virtue of having Capture Master and or Carving Master, you grind out 2 or 3, let's say you grind out 3 of them and you realize, well, I have these 2 things. I got all the rewards that I needed to build the thing I wanted. If I didn't have Capture Master, Carving Master, I would have had to grind out 1 more monster, maybe 2 to get the thing that I needed. But so by having Capture Master in this example, you didn't have to grind out that 4th version of the monster. So the Capture Master skill effectively did the equivalent of 50,000 points of damage, because that's 50,000 points of damage you did not have to do in order to meet your goal. There isn't a single skill in the game that can give you 50,000 points of damage. Now, again, this is just one example, but if you extrapolate this over the long term, you're looking at hundreds of thousands, millions of points of damage that Capture Master and Carving Master equate to. That's not high DPS, then I don't know what is. Carving Pro prevents knockback. This is kind of in the same scenario. Now, again, nobody ever needs to have Carving Pro, right? Who uses Carving Pro? This is kind of a carryover from older games when there were a lot of small, annoying monsters trying to prevent you from getting those final carves. But theoretically, if you're doing that final carve and a little monster comes over to try to knock you over, it could prevent you from getting that final carve. So in theory, this is going to work similar to Carving Master, Capture Master. Again, these aren't all the best DPS skills, right? You're going to have to choose for yourself, because there's more DPS skills than you can fit on your set. So you're going to have to choose whether or not that one helps you along your goals. Now, Constitution, I've got tons of videos on why Constitution is irrelevant, for at least for using bow. But you might be the type of person who just loves it, and that's fine. I know a lot of people who do, and if it works for you, great. The rationale that they give me for using Constitution is I can keep attacking more and more without having to stop and regenerate my stamina. So by our definition here, Constitution is a DPS skill because it reduces the time in between your attacks. If it allows you to attack continuously, that is absolutely a DPS skill. And now we come to Defense Boost. Defense Boost, a lot of people don't realize this. When you get Defense Boost 7, you have resistances, all resists. You have a bonus to your resistances. So that alone makes Defense Boost a DPS skill because you pair Defense Boost 7 with your Dragon conversion. Don't like that answer? Sucks to be you. This is a DPS skill just for that alone. If you're looking for more explanation as to how Defense Boost is a DPS skill, or anything that boosts your defense is a DPS skill, then I point you to the rationale for Intrepid Heart. Damage reduction. Simple as that. The more damage reduction you have, the shorter the time in between your attacks. The same reason Intrepid Heart is spoken highly of amongst the elite players. Prevent the one-shots. Give you the damage reduction. Reduce the time in between attacks. Reduce the number of carts. Defense Boost is the exact same rationale. We already covered it. So if you accept that Intrepid Heart is a DPS skill, you must accept that Defense Boost is a DPS skill as well. And I just gave you 2 great reasons as to why it is. Diversion increases the attention drawn when attacking a monster. This one works great in multiplayer because you're going to decrease the amount of time in between your teammates' attacks. Now, there are other reasons why Diversion works great. You can pair Diversion with Embolden. You get the monster to target you, then it becomes enraged, and it increases your stats and makes Embolden activate more often for you. And since we've already determined that Embolden is a DPS skill, the more you can get Embolden to trigger, the higher your DPS. Divine Blessing. People love to say Divine Blessing is better than Defense Boost. Well, look, if Divine Blessing is better than Defense Boost for damage reduction, and Intrepid Heart is a DPS skill, Divine Blessing is a DPS skill. Earplugs. I don't know anyone who uses earplugs, but if you use earplugs, the time in between your attacks is reduced. No question about it. We'll get back to evade extender and evade window. Flinch free. I mean, this is just obvious. The fewer knockbacks you get, the fewer interruptions you have to your attacks, the lower the time in between your attacks. Focus. A lot of people say focus is not that effective. It doesn't matter how effective it is. It does reduce the time in between your charged attacks. We'll come back to free meal. We'll come back to Geologist. Good luck. Same logic as Carving Master and Capture Master. Just rewind and listen to that again. All right, we determined that Guard, by virtue of reducing your blocking animation, reduces the time in between your attacks. Guard Up is damage reduction. We already talked about damage reduction, so let's just put that in there. And then again, allows you to actually continue in the flow of blocking attacks rather than trying to evade them. So if you have a blocking heavy playstyle, you can stay in that playstyle while you're able to block more attacks. And if you can stay in that flow, your time in between attacks will stay low. Hunger Res reduces maximum stamina depletion. Now this is rarely an issue for the experts whose quests don't take longer than 5 minutes. But if your quest is dragging on, you're going to lose maximum stamina. That stamina meter will shorten. And so Hunger Res will prevent it from shortening, since we've already determined that maintaining higher levels of stamina is a DPS skill. Hunger Res, by extension, is a DPS skill. Jump Master prevents knockbacks. Anything that prevents you from falling on your ass will reduce the time in between your attacks and is therefore a DPS skill. Again, I'm not saying these are all the most effective ones. I'm just saying they are directly contributing to DPS for the vast majority of players. Leap of Faith. This one is cool because you can dive evade facing the monster. So rather than having to turn around and move away from the monster, you can move right toward the monster. So you can close distance while dive evading. Okay. And it even makes you jump further. So you can use this to close distance through attacks, allowing you to start attacking again much more quickly. Load shells. All right. So increases gunlance shelling capacity. More shells means more full burst damage. Period. DPS. Marathon Runner slows down stamina depletion. Well, this one is actually a bit controversial as to whether it contributes to DPS. Now, people who hate wyvern riding and who say it takes away from the flow of the combat and actually lowers their DPS, well, if you have Master Mounter, you're going to fill the gauge quicker and your wyvern ride's going to be over quicker. So in that sense, if you are a wyvern rider hater and you accidentally mount the monster, Master Mounter will get it over faster, thus reducing the time in between your attacks. Muck Res. Muck Res is amazing. Muck Res is going to ensure that your mobility remains at a maximum. Muck slows you down. Muck Resistance maintains your speed. I don't know if I can make that any clearer. Mushroomancer, a lot of people call this comfort because it allows you to just take more items. But what this is going to do is it's going to allow you to take more items than you normally could possibly carry. So it's going to allow you to maintain buffs for a longer period of time. It's also going to allow you, for example, more max potions. And the more max potions you have means the fewer trips back to camp to get more max potions. Definitely reduces time between attacks. Mushroomancer, great DPS. Paralysis resistance. I mean, that's a no-brainer. If you cannot get paralyzed, you won't have any downtime from it. Reduces time between attacks. Poison res, damage reduction. We've already discussed damage reduction as a DPS skill. Quick Sheath is useful for certain playstyles. People who don't have a playstyle that benefits from Quick Sheath don't use it. But what Quick Sheath allows you to do is, I sound like a broken record, it allows you to reduce the time in between your attacks. So the faster you can put your weapon away, the faster you can do the draw attack, that special draw attack you wanted to do. The faster you can put your weapon away, the faster you can take that potion, that buff, that healing item, whatever it is, that wide range item. The faster you can do Quick Sheath, the better your timings on certain longsword moves. The faster you're sheathing, the more attacks you can get in per second, because so many of those longsword moves rely on doing that special sheath. DPS skill for sure. Do you need it? No, you don't need it. Again, you don't need any of these skills. Is it optimal? It's optimal if you personally think it's optimal for you. If it works well for you, then it's optimal. Is it efficient? Well, if it works for your playstyle, it's efficient, but there's no question it's a DPS skill. Recovery speed. This is sort of the complement to damage reduction. Damage reduction prevents the damage from happening to begin with, whereas this skill, as well as recovery up, will allow your health to come back faster. If damage reduction is a DPS concept, then certainly recovery speed and recovery up are as well. Sleep res, same logic as para res. You ain't doing damage if you're lying on the ground asleep. Slugger. A monster that is knocked out is not moving. A monster that is not moving is a monster that is going to take the highest DPS possible in most situations, right? Some of you are going to give me some counterexamples to that. But the more you can knock out a monster, the more damage you can do to it in a given period of time. Slugger is absolutely a DPS skill. Speed eating. Faster you can take that potion, faster you can take that buff, faster you can get back to attacking. Stamina Surge. If Constitution is DPS skill, so is Stamina Surge. Stamina Thief is very similar to Slugger in that when the monster's just standing there, you can do more damage to it. Steadiness. Lower the deviation means more of your shots will hit where you're aiming. Thus, more shots will do the highest amount of damage rather than straying off to the side and hitting the wrong hit zone. Stun Res. Same logic as Sleep Res. Tremor Res. Same. Now, again, nobody uses Tremor Res, right? We all use something else to deal with tremors, but maybe you do use Tremor Res. I would love to see your build with Tremor Res. It used to be really cool in the older games. It's just carried forward, I guess, just conceptually, kind of like earplugs. We just get the earplugs and the Tremor Res from other skills. Wall Runner reduces stamina consumption when running on walls. Anything that reduces stamina consumption should be a DPS skill. So we're going to put that in, and we're going to go back up and put in our Marathon Runner as well. I'm not even going to debate that one. Windproof. It's like all these other resist skills. If you're standing there in a wind animation, you're not attacking. And then Wirebug Whisperer. So anything that increases your Wirebug recovery rate reduces the amount of time in between Wirebug attacks. Look at all these DPS skills. Now, Thunder Alignment, Wind Alignment, I'm just not motivated to look up what the hell they do. We'll get to them. See, I just like to procrastinate. Free Meal. It's effectively increases the number of items you can carry, right? Because you don't use one. When you use it, you don't actually use it up. So anything that decreases the number of times you have to go back to camp will also decrease the time in between attacks. Free Meal is a DPS skill. Geologist. Now, we talked about the long game when it came to the whole motivation for why we play and how we measure efficiency. Well, how some of you guys measure efficiency. And so the more rewards you can get per hour, the quote unquote better you are at the game, right? The more efficient you are at the game. And so if Carving Master, Capture Master, if the whole rationale for higher DPS is to get more rewards per hour of gameplay, then you cannot deny that Geologist also meets that goal. Geologist gets you more rewards in a given period of time. There's some things you have to gather. And so this will get you more of those gathering rewards in a given period of time, thus allowing you to spend more time fighting monsters, thus reducing the amount of time in between attacks on monsters. Evade Extender, Evade Window. Evade Extender is like the biggest, these two I think are the biggest skills that people will claim are comfort skills. I'm going to go further than that. I'm going to say these aren't comfort skills. I'm going to say Evade Extender allows you to do things in the game that you otherwise can't do without it. You can close distance in a ridiculous way. You can maneuver in crazy ways. You can develop a playstyle based on Evade Extender that allows you shorter period of time in between attacks. Absolutely a DPS skill. Evade Window is very similar in that respect. Evade Window is probably the single biggest skill that people claim as a crutch, right? It's a crutch, it's a comfort. You just got to learn to play the game better. For most people, we're not going to get that good. We just aren't going to get that good at evading. Even the experts don't want to have their timings down that good. I would bet that most of you experts out there, when you just want to chill and hunt, you switch to a different weapon, don't you? You don't play your main weapon. You switch to a different weapon that's more comfortable for you. You switch to a different play style that's more comfortable for you. That mode that you're in when you're just chilling and hunting, that's the level of skill and effort that most people want to put in, that most people in the Monster Hunter player base are willing to put in. And so if you're out there switching weapons or switching play styles when you just want to kick back and relax and not worry about things too much, that's what most people do on a daily basis. That's how they play the game. That might help you to understand their point of view. That might help you to actually show some empathy for the 20 million people out there who can't, compete the same way you can. And so Evade Window allows you to not be so stressed all the time, not having to hit everything perfectly all the time. You can spend that 1 hour a day that you may have to play the game. You can spend it relaxing while you play rather than being on edge the whole time. I think for the vast majority of people, they're going to have a lot more fun if they're not on edge all the time and just trying to perfect their craft every moment that they have available to play the game, which is not that much. Okay, so Evade Window definitely is going to reduce the time in between attacks, for sure, and reduce anxiety levels. And if you're trying to achieve this superior level of play when you don't really have a lot of time to practice, you're probably just going to quit the game because you're going to be disappointed in yourself and you're going to be disappointed in the game. And so time between attacks, well, your time between attacks is infinite if you quit the game, isn't it? So skills like evade window, defense, damage reduction, which, you know, again, we can't argue that it's not a DPS skill. You just can't argue it anymore. These types of skills that are traditionally called comfort skills make the game enjoyable for the vast majority of people. You know, quick breath and redirection. We got, you know, damage reduction, damage evasion. Same concept here, guys. They make the game enjoyable for more people, which means they're more likely to continue playing the game. The only way you can do damage to monsters is if you're actually playing the game. And so when you meta chasers and meta masters and DPS juggernauts, you have all your advice for, you know, use these skills, don't use these skills, learn how to play better, get good, that kind of stuff. It's almost as if you don't want people to play the game, isn't it? It's almost as if you just want you and your friends, who are all these wonderful elite role-playing players, to have this game all to yourself, and the 20 million people can just all go find something else to do. It's kind of what it seems like. It is a form of gatekeeping. But look, if you want people to enjoy their time with the game, and that's truly your goal, help people enjoy their time with the game, then you're going to help them do whatever it takes to reduce the time in between attacks. At some point in their Monster Hunter adventure, they're going to need these types of skills, these damage reduction skills. Again, you cannot deny that damage reduction is a DPS skill, because you guys are saying, get Intrepid Heart for damage reduction. Just get Intrepid Heart. That's all you need. You say that to us. Get Intrepid Heart. That's all you need. Well, maybe that's all you need. But if some people need more damage reduction, then they need to use some of these other skills. It's not for comfort. It's not because, you know, they need crutches. It's because they need more damage reduction than you in order to maintain the DPS, in order to continue attacking. It's really that simple, guys. Almost all of these skills, if you go through the first pass, most of the skills were directly affected your attack power and your damage. And then almost all the rest will decrease your time between attacks, either through damage reduction or through reducing or eliminating these animations that trap you, that keep you from doing anything. And then there's another category that's sort of, in the true sense of the word, a meta category, meta armor skills for the meta game, right? The meta game really is, what are your own goals that you layer in on top of the game? And so that meta game for a lot of people, especially the damage meta chasers, is, I need to get the most rewards in the shortest period of time. And so some of these skills I would call meta game skills that allow you to achieve that goal, like Capture Master, Carving Master, Geologist. All right, they allow you to get more rewards in a shorter period of time. So we've covered everything except wind alignment, thunder alignment, botanist. Yeah, that is just like Geologist. That is a DPS skill. I'm just too lazy to look these up and wrap it up. Let me know in the comments exactly what these do. Would you call these DPS skills? And if not, what the hell are they? I don't think they're comfort skills, right? So there you have it. Literally every skill in the game is a DPS skill. That's the punchline to this video. Pretty amazing, I know. Nice joke, right? You like my spreadsheet videos, I know. You love that defense spreadsheet video. It was way too long. Now you got your own every armor skill in the game spreadsheet video. I didn't have to do any calculations. DPS, it's all about DPS, right? It's funny how if you assume that the game is about DPS, then you can rationalize that everything in the game that benefits you in some way will also benefit your DPS. The logical fallacy that we call that is called begging the question. You take your conclusion and you just assume it to be true. And then you use that as the proof that your assumption is true. So if you assume that the game is all about DPS, then of course, the best way to play the game is to maximize your DPS. So, and that's what you guys do. You assume that the game is all about DPS. You say that, you literally say that. You say DPS means more monsters killed per hour. The point of the game is to kill the monsters as fast as you can to get the rewards as fast as you can. That's what you say the game is about. Those two things are logically equivalent. DPS is logically equivalent to how fast you can complete your quests. So if you say the game is about completing your quests quickly, then of course, completing your quests quickly is the best way to play the game. It's called begging the question. Some people call it circular logic, circular reasoning. But I know there are a lot of you out there watching this video, and a lot of people who actually like my videos and who leave amazing comments. The point of the game for them is not to complete your quests as quickly as you can. That's literally not the point of the game for them. I would guess that the vast majority of people who have ever played Monster Hunter, that they've never gotten to the point. We're talking the 20 millions, okay? We're not talking the maybe 50,000 people who are still booting up Rise or World, once or twice a week. I'm talking about the 20 million people. I would bet you that the vast majority of those 20 million never got to the point in their Monster Hunter journey where they really cared how quickly they completed the quest. I would bet you they got to the point where they cared whether or not they completed the quest, but not how quickly they completed it, okay? Think about that for a minute. I mean, really think about that. Those 20 million people, probably 15, 18 million of them just wanted to finish the quest. The timer was just, that was cool. Maybe it was cool that I finished it a little faster, but at least I got it done and I didn't triple cart. Now, on top of that, there's another large percentage of people who want to complete quests, but beyond a certain point, it's irrelevant. And I think we all have that. For me, it's 10 minutes. My quest goes longer than 10 minutes. I'm out. I can't do it. I need to get it done in under 10. A couple exceptions to that, but I start getting bored. That's my threshold. Some people it's 20 minutes. If they can complete the quest in under 20 minutes, they're golden. It gives them 2 or 3 quests an hour. They maybe play for a couple hours to get 4 or 5 quests done. No big deal. They had fun. That's their expectation. For some people, it's 5 minutes, and you guys are all nuts. I got to tell you that right now. Because if you look at your average quest time, all the prep and practice and triple carding and quest failures, and you add all that in, your quest times aren't 5 minutes. They're a lot longer than that. I rarely fail quests. It's very, very rare that I fail quests. So most of my time spent in quests is meaningful in that it leads to a quest success. So if I can beat my quest in under 10 minutes with almost no quest fails versus, okay, I'm beating my quest in under 5 minutes, but I fail 2 or 3 times in between each one. Who's more efficient? It's quest successes per hour, right? So if you're trying to work hard toward that under 5 minute mark, very few of you are going to get there. And I think a lot of you might be even fooling yourselves as to how efficient you really are. Yeah, but we all have a different threshold, don't we? For some of us, it's just beating the quest. For some, it's 30 minutes, 20 minutes, 15, 18, 10, 5, whatever it is. It's not about maximizing the DPS all the time. It's not about getting the absolute lowest possible time. That's not how we play it. We hit the threshold and we're satisfied. If I hit my 10-minute threshold, I'm satisfied, unless I'm trying to prove a point. I would say for most people who've ever played the game, they're satisfied by either simply beating the quest at all, or their threshold is somewhere 20 minutes or higher, that they beat it in 20 minutes or they beat it in 30 minutes, something 20 and above. The vast majority of Monster Hunter players, that's where they stand. So all this talk about, the goal of the game is DPS, the goal of the game is quest per hour. In my belief is that doesn't apply to the vast majority of people who play Monster Hunter, which makes this entire video irrelevant, doesn't it? Which makes your obsession with DPS and trying to convince everyone that DPS above all else, it makes that irrelevant, and it makes you out of touch with all of the rest of us who just want to have fun in our own way. I made a video about all the different ways people like to have fun with Monster Hunter. Maybe it's time to revisit that one, isn't it? We'll have to up the ante a little bit. There it is. Everything contributes to DPS except thunder alignment and wind alignment.